You've probably seen the headlines, right? This big international push against cybercrime infrastructure. It really feels like a major win, maybe a strategic shift in this whole fight against ransomware.
It really does. Yeah, these aren't just, chasing random hackers anymore. They're aiming right at the core infrastructure, the services that make these huge attacks possible.
Right, exactly. So for this deep dive, we're going to unpack Operation Endgame. And, look at all these recent law enforcement actions. They seem to have landed some serious blows against the networks, the people behind all this malware and ransomware stuff.
Hmm.
Our goal here is really to pull out the key details, try and grasp just the sheer scale of these takedowns, and figure out what it tells us about, well, cybercrime today.
And as we dig into these really critical details, this deep dive is brought to you by Stonefly. They're a leader in enterprise storage, backup, and disaster recovery, AI storage, and cloud solutions.
Yeah, and if you're looking for that secure, ransomware-proof storage, Stonefly's got air-gapped and immutable options.
That's right. You can contact them at sales@stonefly.com to schedule a demo.
Okay, huge thanks to Stonefly for supporting this. Now, Operation Endgame. Let's get specific. That period between May 19th and 22nd, what actually, happened? What was the impact?
Well, the scale and the coordination were pretty striking. In just those few days, law enforcement working across 7 countries managed to seize 300 servers.
300 servers.
Yep, and they neutralized 650 domains. That's like a direct hit on the digital backbone these criminal groups need to even operate, let alone communicate.
And it wasn't just about pulling plugs on servers, right? They went after the money, too. I saw something about cryptocurrency.
That's absolutely correct. During just that week, EUR 3.5 million in crypto was seized.
Wow.
Yeah, and if you add that to what they got in earlier phases of Operation Endgame, the total jumps up to EUR 21.2 million. Hitting their cash flow like that is crucial. It makes it harder for them to fund new operations, recruit people.
So who exactly were they targeting in this phase? It wasn't just one single group, was it?
No, not at all. It was broad. Europol and Eurojust coordinated this, and they went after several really significant players in the whole cybercrime ecosystem. We're talking Bumblebee, Lactrodectus, Qakbot, DanaBot, Trickbot, and Warmcookie.
Okay, yeah, some of those names definitely ring a bell if you follow cybersecurity news. What's the typical role of these operations? Are they the ones actually deploying the final ransomware?
Well, that brings up a really critical point about how cybercrime works now. It's become specialized. A lot of these operations, they aren't necessarily the ones doing the final ransomware attack themselves. Instead, they're providing like malware or access as a service. MaaS, they call it. Malware-as-a-Service.
MaaS. Okay, so other criminals basically rent access or buy the initial foothold from them.
Exactly. Ransomware groups or their affiliates, they'll rent time on these botnets or use these specific malware strains to get that first foot in the door of a victim's network. That initial access is absolutely vital before they can even think about deploying ransomware.
Ah, okay. So law enforcement isn't just chasing the final attacker. They're going after the whole supply chain, the underlying economy. That sounds like what Europol meant by breaking the kill chain.
Precisely. Yeah, the kill chain is that sequence of steps an attacker follows, from getting in to moving around to achieving their goal, like deploying ransomware. So disrupting that chain early on is key. And Europol's executive director, Catherine DeBoll, she specifically pointed out that this shows law enforcement can adapt and hit these groups right at the source, even when the criminals keep changing tactics.
That quote really highlights the strategy involved.
No.
Okay, let's zoom in on when you mentioned DanaBot. The U.S. Department of Justice just unsealed some specific charges related to that one, right?
Yes, they did. The DOJ unsealed charges against 16 people. They allege these individuals are part of a Russian cybercrime gang running DanaBot. They named a few, like Alexander Stepanov, Artem Alexandrovich Kalinkin, Daniil Kalalahov, but others were just known by online aliases.
And DanaBot itself, was it a big deal? What kind of scale are we talking?
Oh, it was massive. DanaBot's been active since 2018. It managed to, in fact, get this, over 300,000 computers around the world.
300,000. Wow.
And the financial damage, estimated at over $50 million.
50 million. Okay. So how did this MaaS platform work for the criminals using it?
Well, it ran on that malware-as-a-service model we talked about. The admins, they'd lease out access to the botnet, its tools, for thousands of dollars a month.
Right.
And the capabilities were pretty sophisticated, especially for financial crime. It could hijack your online banking session.
Ooh.
Yeah, steal browsing data, history, give full remote access to the infected machine, log keystrokes. It could even record video of the user's screen.
That sounds incredibly invasive.
Yeah.
Just nightmare fuel. But I thought I read something even, well, more concerned about DanaBot, like a totally separate version used for something else.
Ah, yes. And this is where it gets really interesting, and maybe shows how the lines are blurring, The DanaBot admins allegedly also ran a second completely separate version of their botnet. This one was apparently built specifically for cyber espionage.
Espionage? Really? How is that different from the one stealing bank details?
The main difference was the goal, and crucially, how it handled the data. This espionage version, it was designed to record everything. All interactions on the computer, not just banking or finance-related stuff. And, importantly, it sent all that stolen data to a completely different set of servers than the fraud version used.
Okay, and who are they targeting with this espionage variant?
According to the DOJ charges, this version was allegedly aimed at really sensitive targets. We're talking diplomats, law enforcement people, military members, mostly in North America and Europe.
Okay, wow. That just adds a whole other dimension, doesn't it?
All right.
It suggests that the same infrastructure built for, stealing money can be rented out or repurposed for state-level spying, basically, targeting really sensitive people.
Exactly. It really highlights how complex and, frankly, how adaptable these threats are. Motivations aren't always just money, and criminal tools can definitely have dual uses.
Right. Let's try and connect this latest action back to the bigger picture then. Operation Endgame isn't happening in a vacuum. There have been other related takedowns recently. Feels like a sustained effort.
Yeah, if you look at the broader context, you definitely see a continuous multi-year push by law enforcement globally. Remember, there were earlier phases of Operation Endgame itself. Those seized over 100 servers, took down more than 2,000 domains used by various malware loaders.
Loaders like iSide, Trickbot, Bumblebee, those kinds of things.
Smoke loaders, too. And those loaders, they're often that critical first step, right? The way other malware, including ransomware, gets onto a system in the first place.
So stopping the loaders prevents attacks before they even really start.
Exactly. And beyond Endgame, we've seen other big wins lately, like just in June 2024, they arrested a specialist, someone who created crypters.
Crypters, what's their role?
Oh, absolutely vital for the attackers. A crypter basically scrambles or encrypts the malware code. The goal is to make it undetectable by standard antivirus software, so security tools just don't see it coming. Taking out someone with that specific technical skill, especially someone working for big names like Conti and LockBit, that's a significant blow.
Makes sense. And I remember reading something about police actually tracking down the customers of a botnet. That sounds different.
It is a different angle, yeah. Back in April, police apparently used intelligence they got from a seized database. This database belonged to SmokeLoader, and it listed their subscribers, basically, the criminals who were paying to use the SmokeLoader service.
So they used the botnet's own customer list against them.
Pretty much. They reportedly detained at least 5 individuals based purely on that subscriber intelligence. So that's going after the users of these MaaS platforms, not just the people running them. Turns the whole criminal business model on its head a bit.
That's fascinating, using their own records. Okay, and there was also something recent about the alleged leader of Qakbot.
Yes, Rustam Rafaelovich Galyamov. Alleged leader of Qakbot. He was recently indicted in the U.S. Qakbot was another huge one. Compromised over 700,000 computers, a major pathway for ransomware globally.
And didn't Microsoft lead another disruption just recently, too?
They did. Earlier this month, Microsoft spearheaded an action against the Luma MaaS operation. That resulted in seizing around 2,300 domains Luma used. Luma's mainly an info stealer, another type of MaaS often used right at the start of attacks to grab credentials or initial access.
Okay, so when you put all these actions together, Operation Endgame, the crypter arrests, going after customers, the Qakbot indictment, the Luma disruption, what does all this activity mean for you listening right now? Why should you care about these takedowns?
Well, I think it shows a couple of really key things. First, just the sheer scale and, frankly, the professionalism of modern cybercrime. These MaaS models, the dedicated espionage variant of DanaBot. This isn't just, kids in basements anymore.
Right. It's structured, like actual businesses almost, offering crime as a service, even espionage as a service.
Exactly. But the second thing it shows, and this is important, is that international law enforcement is actively adapting. They're working together across borders. They're targeting the infrastructure, the key people. They are getting better at disrupting these networks, seizing the money, and actually prosecuting the individuals who provide these foundational criminal services.
So it's this constant battle, isn't it?
Hmm.
Criminals adapt, law enforcement tries to disrupt them earlier and earlier.
It's definitely a dynamic fight, an ongoing arms race, really, between the attackers and the defenders in the digital world. And, each of these takedowns, they don't just disrupt things now, they also provide vital intelligence that helps plan the next actions.
Okay, so let's try and summarize. Operation Endgame, all these related international efforts, they're having a tangible impact. They're dismantling critical infrastructure, hitting the criminals financially, and bringing charges against people involved in some really sophisticated operations, including these malware-as-a-service providers and, worryingly, even those allegedly using criminal tools for state-level spying.
Yeah, these actions are strategically chipping away at that complex supply chain, that whole economy that enables ransomware and these other devastating attacks.
It definitely leaves you thinking, though. Given how incredibly adaptable these cybercrime groups have shown themselves to be, and seeing that really troubling dual-use potential with DanaBot crime and espionage, what does this constant, relentless fight tell us about how cybersecurity threats are going to evolve next? And maybe more importantly, what kind of defenses, what kind of strategies are we going to need to keep up? It really leaves you with a lot to mull over about what's coming down the pike.
It's definitely the critical question for everyone navigating the digital world today.
And as you think about that, remember this deep dive was brought to you by Stonefly. For secure, ransomware-proof storage solutions, including things like air-gapped and immutable storage, you can contact them. Just email sales@stonefly.com to schedule a demo. That's sales@stonefly.com.